More facts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. C'est un grand plaisir pour moi.
It's a great pleasure for me to speak to the issue of this NDP motion today.
To my mind, the two individuals who I have ever met who are the most committed to social affordable housing. Those people are Claudette Bradshaw and Adam Vaughan. And the two are linked. For reasons I will explain, the two are linked.
Right on.
Claudette Bradshaw was the driving force for affordable housing in two Liberal governments. She had her Skippy program. She pushed and pushed and pushed to make it happen. It did happen. It had results until the NDP brought it down in 2005, but it had results. And now we have the new Claudette Bradshaw on the horizon.
Yes.
And I speak, of course, of Adam Vaughan,
Here, here.
the Liberal candidate for Trinity Spadina.
Oh, yes.
Adam
Oh,
Vaughan is such an enthusiast for housing that he phoned me up before he was even a candidate, and he lectured me or educated me on the importance of housing. And last night I spoke to him, and so I am able to impart to this House the wisdom of Adam Vaughan on the subject of housing. And I believe Adam Vaughan will be the new Claudette Bradshaw, because I have every confidence that in the not-too-distant future, he will be pushing a new Liberal government, as an elected member, of course, to do for housing what Claudette Bradshaw pushed an old Liberal government to do. And with the force and the character and the argumentative skills of Adam Vaughan, I am convinced that the Liberal Party and the Liberal government will carry this through.
Right on. Here, here.
And let me give you a quote from Adam Vaughan, and I quote directly from what he told me last night. Quote, "The NDP is more interested in building its party in the House than in building houses for people in need. That's their record," end of quote.
Ain't that the truth?
Now, that's a powerful statement. The NDP would prefer to build people in the House, in their party, than build houses for people in need. And Adam Vaughan doesn't just say that out of the air. He has two very strong pieces of evidence. The first piece of evidence is, as we all know, back in 2005, when the Liberal government of Paul Martin produced a budget which had $480 million extra money for housing.
What did the NDP
and the NDP,
do?
they brought it down.
No.
So instead of getting $480 million for housing and so many billion dollars for affordable childcare, we got almost 10 years of the current Prime Minister.
Thanks to the NDP.
Thanks to the NDP. But then second, and this is Adam Vaughan's second point, and it shows he has his finger on the pulse of Ontario that he would bring this to our attention. Much more recently, the NDP did it again. They brought down the Wynne government, including that budget. And you know what was part of that budget? Guess, money for housing, $80 million. So they brought down the Martin government at a cost of $480 million for housing. Then they brought down the Wynne government at a cost of $80 million for housing. So they bequeathed to Canada almost 10 years of our current Prime Minister, and I hope this won't be the case, but the consequence of their action could be that they bequeath to Ontario some years of Mr. Hudak. So thank you, NDP.
Twice.
So I would go so far, Mr. Speaker, as to say that the NDP record on housing is even worse than the Conservative record on housing.
That's right.
The Conservatives don't like affordable housing. They hate it. Just read their 2006 fiscal imbalance document. But at least they put a few dollars into housing. The NDP has put nothing into housing because they've never been a government. And they produced a silly private members bill, and because it's a private members bill, it spends no money either. So on the positive side of the ledger for the NDP in housing is zero. On the negative side of the ledger, there's minus $480 million at the federal level, 80 million more recently at the provincial level. So plus they have zero, minus they have minus $560 million contribution to housing.
Wow.
The Conservative record is pathetic, but I'd rather go for a few Conservative dollars than minus 560 million NDP dollars for affordable housing.
Here, here.
And Mr. Speaker, let me continue with a bit more on the wisdom of Adam Vaughan, because he's truly passionate on this subject. And I'm convinced that the citizens of Trinity Spadina will prefer a Liberal candidate who is passionate on housing rather than turn to the NDP, whose record is minus $560 million on housing. But what Adam Vaughan says, apart from saying that the NDP is more interested in building its party in the House than in building houses for people in need, that's their record. I repeat it because it's so wise. It bears repeating. But he also says smart investments in housing reap major benefits in other areas. And he says it's not just about helping the homeless, as the NDP seems to believe. There are other benefits, and he gives 3 examples. And this is straight out of the mouth of Adam Vaughan from my conversation last night. First, he says, housing constructed near hospitals for nurses is a positive thing because it saves on traffic gridlock, which costs a lot of money and frustration, and it also strengthens the healthcare system. So there are, if you like, spillover benefits which Adam Vaughan has drawn to the attention of the NDP and indeed to all members of this House. Second, he says, housing constructed for people with mental health problems and other substance abuse problems will be good for those people, but in addition it will save the government money that it would otherwise have to spend on health care and even social assistance, because if you put a roof under somebody's head, you equip that person much better to deal with the future, even if that person has some mental challenges. And the third example he gives is that housing built for students on or near university campuses results in lower student debt, healthier graduating student population, but in addition, Adam Vaughan emphasizes, it leaves a legacy of houses for future generations of students. It's not just a one-time thing. The houses don't get built one year and then disappear the next. They're there for many years to come to support future generations of students, to strengthen the middle class, to strengthen equality of opportunity in building up our post-secondary education system. So I would commend to the NDP, and more particularly I would commend to the citizens of Trinity Spadina, these wise words from our candidate Adam Vaughan, who not only sees through the negativity of the NDP historically on this record since 2005, but also has strong, sensible, vigorous ideas of his own. And you can be sure, Mr. Speaker, that once he's a member of the Liberal caucus, housing will be even more on our agenda going forward than it is today. And of course, and this is my final point, Adam Vaughan would agree with us and even with the NDP that this business where the government lets these long-term mortgages run out and does nothing for supporting renters in need and supporting the co-op industry, this is really a recipe for disaster, a recipe for many people becoming homeless, and that is something that the Conservatives are totally responsible for. So we would urge them to change that misguided policy, and it is for that reason, perhaps principally, that we in the Liberal Party would support this motion by the New Democrats. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Nickel Belt.
I'm lost for words. 1,000 comedians out of work, and we have to listen to this. I can't believe it. He talked about negatives and positive. The positive thing that the NDP did, which became a negative for the Liberals, is we gave him, what's his name again? Bob Ray. That's it. We gave him Bob Ray. And good Lord, what a gift. The gift that keeps on giving. And he talks about Adam somebody, but he fails to mention that Joe Cressy is an advocate, a long time advocate for housing in Trinity Spadina. And he is going to represent the NDP in this House. Not Adam Adam, whatever. But I don't know what to ask, Mr. Speaker. I mean, this is the funniest speech I've ever heard. Well, this is the second funniest because the one previous to that was funny too. God. Does the member believe that the federal government should play in federal housing? What role should they play in federal housing? And now I don't want them to tell me the liberal role that they played in the past, because that was a disaster. Because she admitted it herself that they needed 3 more months to do something right. Because in 12 years, they were never able to do anything right.
The honourable member from Markham-Unionville.
Well, I thank the honourable member for his comment, and the fact he said it was such a funny speech I will take as a compliment. I thought I was quite amusing myself. And the NDP in particular, I know math has never been their strong suit. Understanding the economy is not their strong suit. He seems to have trouble with the pluses and minuses, so I'll have to explain it to him again. It's 0 on the positive side federally because they've never been the government and private members' bills can't spend money. It's $560 million negative on the negative side because they brought down the Martin government and the Wynne government. That at a cost of $560 million for housing. So on the Liberal side in Trinity Spadina, the voters can choose between Adam Vaughan, a passionate advocate for housing who can help a future Liberal government really deliver in the future, or some NDP candidate who will campaign on minus $560 million from his party for the housing sector. I think voters will be able to make up their mind, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Mississauga, Streetsville.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, I have to agree with my colleague from the NDP. I think there was a lot of humour in the speech from the minister or the member from Markham-Unionville. Mr. Speaker, prior to being elected to this place, I spent at least a dozen years working in the Toronto area on housing-related issues. I think I know the file pretty well. And I do remember back in 2005 when the previous Liberal government was here and the Minister of Housing at the time, who is now the Mayor of the City of London, brought in an affordable housing agreement that was so restrictive, had so many clauses and other things, caveats in it, that the provinces and the City of Toronto of the day couldn't actually get access to the federal money to implement the program because they wrote the program so restrictively nobody could use the money. So what did our government do? Our government got in and said, let's have maximum flexibility in our funding agreements with provinces and municipalities. Let's make sure local needs are respected. And that way we're flowing all of the money through the provincial affordable housing agreements. Can the member for Markham-Unionville tell this House why the last Liberal government really didn't fund affordable housing in the City of Toronto?
The honourable member for Markham-Unionville.
The short answer to that question is we didn't fund affordable housing in the City of Toronto because the NDP defeated our budget and therefore deprived the City of Toronto of its share of the $480 million. But in years prior to that, we did fund it, and I recall conversations with stakeholders, perhaps unlike the members' counterparts, who were very pleased with our program and were very pleased that it had made an impact through the efforts of Claudette Bradshaw on both housing and homelessness. So we were certainly on a roll until the NDP stopped us in our tracks by bringing down that budget. And in terms of the he's telling me to sit down. That's it. Thank you.
Order.